Welcome, everybody, to the Fargo Parking Commission meeting. We'll start the meeting with introductions. Randy,
Randy Thorson, downtown business owner.
Mike Williams, risk manager,
Margie Bailey, Fargo Theater Executive Director, retired.
Dave Pepcorn, Fargo City Commission.
and Deb's our trustee.
Deb Ensrud, Planning Department.
Thanks, Deb. So the first item is to approve the order of agenda. Do I have a motion? Do
So move.
we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks. And then the minutes, Randy, did you want to?
Well, prior to approving the minutes from the last meeting, I wanted to talk about item number 5, and that was the receiving of the phone calls for available public parking, and wanted to know if there was an update on that. And I think Margie has made some phone calls, so I think we should.
Yeah, I received phone calls from people who were across the street from the Fargo Theater primarily because they'd had dumpsters just all of a sudden appear in front of their properties and without any warning whatsoever. And they were already challenged, had significant parking challenges. And so I thought their point, I went downtown and thought their points were really valid, so I gave Nicole Crutchfield a call. And the staff rallied round, and the dumpster was gone within 24 hours. So and I know that the property owners did not move it, so they moved it back to the alley, so that was taken care of. And I think after that, the response time when there were any concerns was really, really efficient and effective, and so I was really proud. I was proud of the city's response. It was admirable.
Yes, and it hits on what we've been talking about communication
Yep.
across dimensions. So-
Exactly. Yeah, you can't just sit and stew in your juice, as my mother used to say. You have to make calls and then have some civil dialogue.
Right, so thanks and congratulations, thanks staff, thanks. So,
I would move to approve the minutes of the February 28th meeting.
do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next item is Vanessa with the interstate, or Paul, interstate parking report and financial data.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. This month's package includes the reports for the months of February and March, and I'd just like to skip up to March, as that already includes the February numbers year-to-date in there. But big thing that jumps out for revenue this month is the Roco Garage had a record number of transient transactions in revenue for the month of March at $17,000, which was $6,000 higher than previous months. Weather-related, obviously, people trying to get out of the elements as much as they could. And we were able to accommodate most of the demand we had. We had to put the full sign on a few days to satisfy our monthly parking requirements, but it was a beautiful plan that came together, and we serviced a lot of people and provided parking for people indoors at the worst possible time during the weather. So good job to Vanessa and her crew to make that happen. It's very encouraging to see that.
I even see cars on the 7th floor, which is a real
Yeah.
good sign.
Yeah.
Well, there were several things going on, so it was wonderful to have that there.
Yeah, and the demand is still very high. We've got waiting lists at Roco and the Civic Ramp still. Hopefully Block 9 comes online. As soon as they do, I think we can alleviate some of that demand buildup. But things are going very well for the downtown parking system right now.
Randy?
So, Paul, that increase, that is probably what we tried to do in the beginning when we set this plan together, so it's nice to see that's working. But that also includes the 2 hours of free parking
Exactly.
prior to.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that increase along with that,
Yeah.
that benefit to those people that go in for 2 hours.
Yeah, you're right. We hoped that was going to happen, but and it seems almost counterintuitive that you give free parking away, you would increase parking, but that's what's happening. People are coming down there, staying a little longer, and it shows. And we're still having the turnover in the garage too. It's not like people are parking there and staying all day. It's turnover traffic, so it's working as you guys planned.
Well, we learned that from our bus trip to Lincoln, and so Dallas,
Yeah,
the
exactly,
manager
yeah.
there, they had an hour free, so we just doubled it. And I think it's a good idea to keep it that way until we get settled in a little more. But who knew that it would actually grow the amount by this much? It's just wonderful.
Yeah, and just a side note too, we introduced that program in the city of Duluth too. They did 1 hour free, and the exact same thing happened. People came downtown and they stayed a little longer. And it's
I think
been
also
fantastic.
it gives them a reason to use that, rather than just go to the street right away.
Yes.
It is 30 minutes longer than the street parking that we have on Broadway. So it's a great way, I think, for us to introduce any of the new garages that we will have in the future as well, so.
Okay. Also, it didn't make it into our packet, but Vanessa handed out a little spreadsheet here. It's called City of Fargo Revenue History. There's several ways we can measure performance of the parking system. One of the easy ones by numbers is to track the revenue since our company started in 2015. Working around a lot of issues with construction and moving people, blocks of people from this garage to this location, things like that. We're still seeing, good consistent growth in the bottom lines without a lot of rate increases. And it's, a lot of the things that we've implemented over the past 5 years in technology and patrol staff and dedicated staff to the system has really been beneficial to the system for the city. So, Mark Williams is not here today, but he asked us to just put that together so people can kind of see a 5-year snapshot of what's been going on since we started. Well, 4 years. It's actually 5 years. Our agreement does end this December, so we need to start talking about that. Make this a 10-year deal instead of a 5-year deal. So. So if anybody has any questions, we're willing to stay afterwards and talk if you have time to review the reports and whatnot.
Well,
We will
thanks,
be here.
Vanessa, for putting this together as far as the year-to-year, revenues. Yeah, I think that's really helpful, and especially as we're developing our parking strategies. It gives us kind of a basis to build off of. So thanks a lot for doing that.
Problem.
How are things going?
Things are going well. We're getting ready to start our spring cleaning and trying to set some time to go around the properties and see what all needs to be done, looking at the striping, filling of the cracks, the landscaping, washing, the power washing, the striping, all of those good things that need to happen in the summer.
Right, so in that area, the gentleman behind you came last fall and presented how we need to adjust some of our handicap parking
spots.
striping. And we did kind of pass that off to Jeremy, but if you could be working with Jeremy and think about how we can make some of these improvements that he's recommended for the designating and properly striping those handicap spots, that would be very nice. Do you want to say something about that, or come on up? Sure.
While he's coming up, can I add something? It's a little bit off topic, but at the Dome Finance Committee yesterday, we added a bunch more mothers' rooms and accessible changing rooms for adults as well on the second floor of the Fargo Dome. So that's a thing that's good. And I know the parking at the Dome we also needed to address, but I just wanted to pass that on. It was kind of a neat thing.
Right, thanks.
There's an article in today's Forum addressing what you just talked about, the Dome. And certainly, before we start striping, this is the time to look at where do the stripes go. It's very easy now to clean it up, restripe it, and get it correct, rather than stripe it as it is and then say, oh gosh, that's wrong. There's many things downtown that need fixing, and some of it is an extremely easy fix. We just have to fix it before we repaint it wrong again. I'd be more than happy to work with you on that. Jeremy Gordon's a good man. He's up to speed with this. The Traffic Technical Advisory Committee talked about that a little bit, but they haven't met for some time.
Right.
And there's minutes that are missing out on the website from their last meeting too.
Well, thanks so much for coming back, and it is perfect timing because, now that they're cleaning up the stand, they're going to start
Absolutely.
striping. So thanks so much. Anything else from interstate parking?
No, that's it. We're here for your, if you have any questions afterwards, we're happy to stay or.
Great. Anybody have any more questions for Interstate? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next item. So an update on construction closings and communications. Nicole, are you going to talk about that?
Well, I'm filling in today for Mark and Jim. I guess in terms of the city, yeah, so I guess I was under the impression, Commissioner, that you were going to speak to this item?
Well, part of it was Margie about that communication. So, you know, things that we are trying to implement, so we aren't just putting out fires, we're trying to hear from our constituents in real time, including like street closings. At our last meeting, we had Jeremy here, and they were going to be developing a program where they tried to coordinate so we don't have Broadway blocked off at the same time we have First Avenue blocked off, just trying to coordinate some of those closings so we don't have a snafu.
Yeah, and so Kevin Gorder and Christy Schmidt in the engineering department have really taken on right-of-way management in downtown, everything from outdoor dining to construction communications. And so what they're working with our city attorney's office, recognizing that some of our regulations aren't as tight as they need to be. So for instance, some of the construction trailers that you see out there, we're having a hard time with enforcement, only because, you know, we have non-compliant owners who, or I should say construction teams, who we don't really have the teeth to. We have to ask nicely, and we don't have any other teeth other than to ask. And so working with Nancy Morris and our city attorney's office, I know Kevin and Christy have been working on that component. In terms of construction, closings, et cetera, and that's really being run out of the engineering office, and we try to communicate frequently, at least once a month, as part of that operation. And that's about all I have to say.
Right, so Vanessa and Melissa, have you guys been hearing more and had more contact with, you know, Kevin and Christy about, you know, giving some warning on some of these closings? Vanessa, you can go first. since
I
Melissa's
don't
going up
always
there.
hear about when trailers are going to be out there, you know, when they're going to be blocking anything, or we don't always hear
Right.
when
So-
streets are closing, some of those trailers, you know,
Right.
dumpsters.
And it is, I mean, things are moving fast, so it is difficult, and that's part of what we're trying to get a system in place where parking knows what's going on, the DCP is able to tell the business owners, you know, what to expect, and, you know, people are tolerant as long as they know there's a reason and there's a plan. But when they don't see a reason or a plan, then that doesn't work so well. Melissa, thanks for coming up.
Yeah, so the DCP has a monthly task force meeting with the city, and we've gained a lot of traction in terms of improving communication. Interstate Parking actually is invited to those meetings, and last week during our task force meeting, we talked through the construction schedule, and there is a lot happening. So there's an email out to Christy and Kevin asking for it in writing so we can share that communication and continue to share that with our businesses and residents. And we feel the DCP, that is our job. So that is a strategy that we are taking very seriously this year. We want to communicate to the public that it is business as usual, and this is the best way to get downtown to utilize what we have going on.
That's right. I mean, even the routes you take, you know, stay away from 4th Street. I mean, geez, go west, go to 8th Street, go to 10th Street, go to 25th Street. I don't care, but there's ways to get here that make a difference. So thanks a lot for that. So again, it's just a work in progress, but, you know, awareness is key. So Vanessa, do you think there's a chance you can, I know you're busy, but to come to some of the bid task force meetings, or maybe, are you already going? There's a downtown task force group that meets
I
once in a while.
haven't made it yet.
And you haven't
but
been able
it's-
to come.
Yeah, I meant
But
to.
I know you're busy, but I think, what is it, the second Tuesday for the bid task force, Melissa? Yep, second Tuesday, and it's early, like 7:30. But we'll send you an invite for sure, and maybe you can come at least for, for a few. Yep.
If I can, there's two different task forces
Right.
we're talking about. So the
Right.
city downtown task force is really an opportunity for all the departments to gather along with the DCP, and I think that's the one that you've been to in the past, or,
I've been to the bid one.
and so this is the
Or
one
the-
where, we have our internal coordination, and I think that's the third, I think it's the third Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe at least, for the first time around, you've been to one but not the other, and just to kind of be more in the loop in that one. I know you've got a lot to do, but we like to hear from you.
Yep, I
but-
sure will.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Vanessa, and now you're gonna be next door neighbors, so when do you move in?
I think June 1st.
We're going to be meeting with Melissa soon,
Wonderful.
after today.
Well, that's great. So for people's information, they're moving into the old city commission administrative and the health, or the human services department. So these, the bid and the DCP and interstate parking are all gonna be in that same vicinity, which is really, I think, a great opportunity. So, thanks. Okay, anything else on the construction closings and communications? Otherwise, we'll move on to the update on downtown projects in Block 9.
Yeah, in staff's absence, Rusty was going to give that update.
I just found that out yesterday. So, and I'll preface this by saying I'm no means an expert. This project was just put on my plate about a week ago, so I'm learning as we go. We're anticipating our ramp will open roughly August 1st, and it'll be open to public parking, permit parking, I would say for plus or minus 12 months by the time we get in the tower. Right now, we're just saying summer of 2020, so about 12 months, give or take. When I met with Jim yesterday, he thinks that'll be a good transition if the Mercantile project comes on board. So this could fill that gap. Then when we move into the tower, the folks that are in this ramp could potentially go to that ramp.
Wonderful. So
That's about all I know today, so don't stump me.
that's fine, but thanks so much, Rusty.
Okay.
One of the things, Paul, is for, the public use for this ramp. So what's your understanding of how that's going to work?
Well, we're not really involved with that project right now. RDO is going to be
As far as
managing
the
that
ramp?
in-house.
Oh,
yes.
they are? They're not using you?
Yeah, they're going to manage it in-house.
Okay.
But, the city and they have agreed that there's going to be free parking after 5 PM still. I don't know if there's an agreement on 2-hour free for the public during the day or not yet.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I apologize for not being at the meeting where they talked about the differences between the prefab parking.
Precast and the board,
So
yeah.
can you, if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about, because I'm sorry I wasn't there, because I'd like to learn, because to me, that was amazing how fast this one went up compared to the anyway.
Right, so Paul's a good one to talk about that. They're building a new ramp right now, and they're using the same cast in place, or the precast type of a system. And from my understanding is the maintenance is a little bit less. You got to do maintenance on both, and the longevity might be a little better on the board, the cast in place. But Paul, you can give us good reasons why. For one thing, time is money, and if you can get up faster, that makes a big
Yeah,
difference.
time is money. With the precast, you got to deal with a lot of joints and things like that. So maybe a little bit of extra maintenance in that, but yeah, it goes up much quicker. Not as weather, not as dependent on the weather being cooperative for pouring cement and stuff too, but.
So from your perspective, though, you've managed both kinds of facilities, obviously, and so, but it's just with the prefab one, there's more seams, so that's kind of the main thing, the main difference?
Yeah. Well, they're a little thinner, but their structure is a little stronger too. So we like the precast because they're a little bit cheaper, they're a lot faster, and as long as you take care of your maintenance, they'll last just as long.
Well, and just by watching that one go up, it was amazing. It was just, it wasn't there and then it was there. It's, it's one of those. So from the perspective, especially in the downtown where the less time kind of we're trying to get these projects done,
Yep.
So-
So, yeah, one of the things that also that we think about and that we talked about for future ramps is whether to make them ramps or to make them flat levels. And that's something that we'll be considering. I think at Mercantile, they're not really looking at the flat floors, but for repurposing, I mean, these things are going to be here for 80 years. We may want them to be more adaptable in some situations. So those are just a lot of considerations to make. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I guess I have one question. I'm sorry. But the prefab,
Glad
so
you're here.
could you go back and like this one is not a flat floor down the road? Is it easier with prefab to make them into a flat floor? I'm guessing that it would be compared to a poured. So I think that's just something to, and maybe you know something about that, but do you get my question? If we, whatever, 60 years from now said, we want to convert this over, would a prefab probably be easier?
I don't know. It depends on the floor to ceiling height, I guess. Right. Right now, they're building them as tight as possible to keep the cost down. I haven't seen many, if any, being converted. I've seen buildings being converted back to parking, as opposed to tearing it down, but I don't know what the strategy would be for that. But.
Right.
Just one more. I think we're fortunate now we have both to see how they perform, and so I think that's kind of a nice thing. But it's impressive and it's very exciting.
Yeah, so Doug Hamilton has the office right there, so he's been giving us stage-by-stage updates. So it's kind of fun to see how fast it has gone, like Legos. And so then 4th Avenue and Broadway, I guess, Nicole?
Yeah, I was able to coordinate with Jim yesterday as well. So he provides the following report that he and Finance Director Kent Costin met with the city financial advisors, Baker Tilly, to have them prepare options for selling bonds for the parking ramps. Also, Jim met with the Renaissance Zone Ventures on possible loan for a portion of the facility. So I think right now they're looking at the financial strategies for the Mercantile Garage. Jim's also met with Tom Smith, the owner of Island Park Cycles, and Tony Coronado, owner of the Bison Building, on access and easement issues. So we're moving forward as we continue to come across those items to coordinate on.
Thank you. That's, can be a really good project too. I hope it, on the way over here, I just took another picture of the Roco Commons, and I love that design. You don't even know there's a ramp there, and you got, there's 150 new people living there, and 30 new business, or I don't know, 25 new businesses, and the sidewalk's alive, and you don't even see the cars.
Amazing.
So
Really
that's
fabulous.
something that when we're trying to do these projects, if the city's involved, I think we need to make sure that they're getting what we need for the project, or aspire to anyway for the project. But anything else on that? Thanks a lot for that update. The next item is discuss the uniform nighttime enforcement. So this winter, again, we had a lot of issues with snow removal, and we always, at the bid task force, we were asking ourselves, well, do we need to change the rules to have enforcement so we get people off, alternate nights? And we looked into it, and we don't. We have the rules in place, we just don't have the enforcement in place. So the DCP, Melissa and Adrian's now head of the bid task force, and they sent a letter to the commission saying, we have these rules in place. I think it'd be helpful to enforce them year-round. And that way, people get into the habit of it instead of just trying to figure out every year having this battle that we're gonna start the alternative street nights. And it also helps with street cleaning in the summertime. So then you can get into the nooks and crannies. They've got a neat little sweeper that they hardly ever get out, but that could work really nice. So you could get into those where all the cigarette butts end up, and you see our bid guys poking away at it. They do a great job, but this could help them do their job better. So I thought
Chair?
it might be,
Sorry, and just maybe as a quick update, sorry to interrupt, but staff is looking at finding out what the costs are through that and working with Ben Dow and police and and seeking to start to get some quotes for that.
Right, so I have had conversations with Interstate Parking and with the city administrator. Basically, we have a contract with Interstate Parking. It could be an amendment to the contract, it could be very simple, and it wouldn't necessarily be another 8-hour shift per day, it may be 3 hours shift per day. So, Paul, what's your take on this? Are you guys, would you be interested in some kind of an amendment to your contract?
Yeah, we sure would. We need to understand the scope still.
Right.
But, one thing I thought of was we could maybe shift around some hours from some of our other staff and make it a full-time overnight type position. So we can do some cleaning and patrolling at the same time, and then you can hire a full-time staff that's easier to employ than a $12 an hour part-timer.
And to me, part of this whole thing is about safety too, and, just having eyes on the street, and again, enforcing the policies that we have in place, and helping with parking management. So I think there could be a simple solution with here, just having a discussion about that. I think we've made some contract amendments in the past, haven't we, Paul?
We have, yep. Yeah, when we added the staff to do the on-street patrolling.
Right.
we changed
So
some things.
Commissioner Pepcorn, what's your take on this?
No, I think we can, especially with the snow removal in the downtown, it's, what happened, all the snowstorms were on a night where they weren't removing snow, and if you don't remove it, those huge ridges, the pedestrians, it's just, you can't get around. And so it's an issue, and so if we were consistent, I think, from my perspective, then it's easier to understand.
Right, so, you're a downtown business owner and you see it every day. When we did Saturday morning enforcement, there's hooting and hollering. So anytime we make changes like this, there's gonna be some backlash.
Right.
So what's your take on doing it year round?
Well, that's the thing. I think if you're consistent, then you wouldn't have backlash. But I would say, it doesn't make sense to have this. To me, I think if we had a better system for the snow removal too, that would simplify it. Like just saying on some night, everything has to be off there because we have to move the snow. And I don't know, but a consistent thing would be nice. But I think emergency snow removal, when you get these big storms, to have it removed immediately is very important for the downtown now. So.
Yep, and that's part of what we had in our discussion with the bid task force, is that they're not mutually exclusive. We really should be doing both. And so, when you're getting a forecast for 6 inches of snow. Randy, do you have some feedback?
Well, I have a few things to comment on that. I think first off, I'd like to see a copy of the current rules and policies
here it is.
prior
Sorry.
to, prior to maybe discussing it. And then I think when you're taking a look at that as commissioners, I think you should take a look at, does it apply year-round? Is it the same reason year-round? We have a lot of businesses on Broadway, and they are open till 2 o'clock in the morning, and if at 2:05 we're writing tickets, I think we're going to have a problem with those business owners. I understand that they need to be cleaned as much as anybody else. You also have to have a priority. When you say you're going to put this into effect, there has to be a priority to cleaning, because right away in the morning people start parking. And I don't think that always happens. I don't think that the downtown is a priority. I've been down here for 35 years, and I haven't seen that. In my own situation, I'm talking as a businessman, we bring in our own skid steer and actually clean the street alongside the old Broadway, on Broadway and NP, because it doesn't happen fast enough. Right. So I think you got to have that. And I think looking at the policies, and I think you can have maybe a winter policy as well as a summer policy, because you can get on the streets no problem on a Monday night and a Tuesday night, to clean the streets during the spring, summer, and fall. Our problem is the snow in the winter. So that's why I'd like to look at the policies. I'd like to have a full discussion of that so it doesn't affect the businesses all year long.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And part of what we discussed at the bid task force was when the enforcement starts. And, we know that the workers that have to clean up, and they don't get out of there till after 2 o'clock sometimes. So then if enforcement were to start at 3 and.
Yeah, that's actually, they don't get out. You get people out of an establishment at, say, 2 o'clock, and you have your cleaning until 3, and then you've got managers that are there till 3:30, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on the size of your facility. So, I just wanted to be able to be clear to them, and in the wintertime where they're going to park. We need them out of the parking lots as well, so that they can be cleaned prior to 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right, so.
So there's a lot of issues, and I think it has to be fully looked at and discussed.
So what I'm hoping we can do is with this, I mean, we really should have done this in the wintertime, but, we were reacting then with snow removal. But Ben has said, yeah, uniform enforcement would be wonderful. But let's submit this with our parking agenda, and then anybody involved, let's copy it, and then ask for some comments, and then next parking meeting, let's go with some recommendations.
Right. Can I add one thing? So the DCP, what I think we should do is talk to everybody. I think it's mainly on Broadway, and I think Randy's point about it's different than it used to be. And now it's vital to get that snow removed because it's a pedestrian-heavy area, and if you don't get it removed, pedestrians can't get around. And so I think we, as a city, have to change our philosophy that needs to be done first thing. And even though people say, well, the downtown gets too much attention, it's like, no, if people are out walking outside in the downtown, and if you have these big ridges,
Right.
you just can't maneuver when you're walking, and let alone accessibility. There is none. When we had these storms and they just plowed the ridges, you couldn't park, and then you had to go to the end of the block to get to any place. So I do think we need to change and what I'd like to do is have the DCP talk to have a voice so everyone gets heard, but then to have them be unified and say, here's the hours and here's what we'd like to have happen. I think that would help.
Now is the time to have this dialogue, because
Exactly.
now people really, it's not crisis mode. So it's really, really important to have it this summer when we have clear skies, hopefully, and clear sidewalks, and then we're planning ahead. And we're getting that communication piece out there. And I know I sound like I'm singing the 25th verse of this song, but it's much easier to communicate when you're not in crisis mode. So
Right.
I think this is a time to do it. And just because it's not snowing, we can't forget. We should all carry around, I think, with us on our phones or something, a picture of what it's been like this winter. And then that will be the motivation for getting this conversation for getting this whole situation thoroughly vetted and coming up with some solutions by the time we hit September.
So Commissioner Thorson?
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that it snows during the day as well. And so, knowing that, having been here all my life, I think you have to have a policy for during the day as well. And I don't know if it's a snow emergency on Broadway, but it certainly would help to clean things up. If it snows after you've cleaned, and now it's 10:30 or 12 o'clock in the morning, a.m., you still have a problem that afternoon. So I think there's just a lot of things to discuss. It's not just the seasons, but it could be day parts as well, and how we're going to react to that. And then what kind of priority cleaning would we have for that in the downtown area?
Right. So I think the basis, for one thing, is, a lot of us hadn't read, and I hadn't read it till we found it again this winter, our policies in place. And they're pretty good, but, we can change it.
Well, and the density has changed so much, specifically in the downtown area, well, other areas of the community as well. So probably since these were standardized, our density has increased, and that makes a huge difference.
Right. So part of this, there would be some impact on budget, possibly, according to Paul. Maybe it's just shifting around some hours. But I don't think it'd be that big of a budget item that, I don't think we have to raise the budget, but it would be nice maybe to have it done by September. But I think that would fit in well with everything, fit into everybody's, it's on everybody's radar.
That's when it starts snowing again.
Yeah, right. Is there any further comments from anybody on any of this?
Well, I'd like to offer,
Sure.
a lot of cities utilize a texting program for warning people, hey, get off the street, stuff like that. It'd be a pretty simple system to get implemented, and then every downtown business owner and anybody who lives downtown would want to be on that text notification. Warning, do not park on Broadway from 8 p.m. on until it's been cleaned, stuff like that. That's been very effective in some of the other cities I work in.
That's a great idea.
Really,
Yeah.
we use that for different types of business. So do they use that in Duluth?
Duluth does partially, but mainly Minneapolis and St. Paul, yeah.
So maybe you can share what's, basically their criteria, with us. What are they using? What triggers that?
Okay, I'll look into some of the details for it, but it's usually snow emergency related.
Right, so they go by the forecast.
Yeah.
If they know there's gonna be big snow, then they put out an alert.
Well, yeah, snow and then, road emergencies. Last year in Minneapolis, a gas line blew, so everybody got notified that, you got to stay off University from this street to this street. They use it, use it judiciously, so people pay attention to it. When they know you get a text, it's important.
Right, well, thanks, Paul.
Just one last comment, and I think the other thing to know when we're doing this as well is to take a look at, the new parking garages and how that helps to eliminate some of the parking on NP and Broadway, so that when we implement something here, we can say, snow emergency route perhaps on First Avenue and Broadway or Second Avenue, whatever it is, because there'll be enough parking, and a lot of that enclosed garage parking is going to help with the cleaning of the parking lots and that issue for late night traffic as well. So there's a lot of things that this is going to involve in taking a look at, but I think that put it all together, understand the day parts, the times of the year, the parking garages, I think we can write an effective policy for keeping that clean downtown.
Sounds good. Anybody else have anything on this subject? Otherwise, we're going to talk about mobility matters. So some of us, Great Rides Bike Share and Matt Bus and the Great Plains Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute, which is at NDSU, and then Metropolitan Council of Governments, Cindy Gray. Basically what this is showing some of the micro-mobility options that we have that people don't really even know about. And this is really focused to business owners and not necessarily to bike riders or walkers. We're really trying to show that as we grow in their downtown core, as we work to recruit and retain, a lot of what we see when we get good quality of life rankings, a lot of things that are mentioned are art, walking and biking and that type of active transportation options. So really what this is a showcase, a little bit of what's already available. Great Rides Bike Share is that for 4 years running has the most rides per bike per day. So again, in Denver and Minneapolis, when they started with 800 bikes, they did 100,000 rides. We had 100 bikes, 1/8, and we did 147,000 rides, and we average 100,000 rides a year with 1/8 of their rides. But the key to it is that easy user access, and it's particularly for students. So there's more technology that's coming. E-scooters are big. I was down in Denver for a week. It's big, and there's really we need to get ahead of it. So where do we want these scooters? Where do we want this new technology? And how do we leverage it so it's beneficial for our residents? So what this is a forum. We were inviting business leaders in particular. For instance, Jay Krabanoff's one of our members here. And I said, Jay, have you ever thought of, what if you didn't pay all of your employees' parking? And he said, well, they'd scream. and I said, well, part of why, again, when we look at the quality of life rankings and what people are looking for a work environment, it's our downtown core. And there is some changes and some give and take about being in that environment. So some cities have encouraged employers to pay half of their parking, or maybe even just give them $20. So, but instead of just paying for their parking, the employees never seeing it, they just drive. They'll drive forever if you just pay for all their parking. But if you paid them half, paid them $40, they might say, well, geez, I could take the bus for 20 and bank 20, or I could ride with somebody and we can car share, or maybe I'll walk a little bit further. But again, we need that culture shift, I think, to leverage these mobility options that are really in demand in what I call peer cities. That's Minneapolis, Portland, Denver. They go there, they say, we want to do this. Like I said, I was in Denver, and the scooters are a big deal, but they have issues because some of them are on the sidewalk. So you feel like a slalom pole while people are whizzing by you. That's not good. So there's a coalition called Micromobility Collaboration that has 23 cities working with vendors of e-scooters and e-trikes and dockless bikes to manage these systems. So like Austin, Texas is part of it. They told these guys, take your stuff off our streets. We don't want them until we get it settled. Well, there's cities that are working to work with the vendors to use it in a manageable way. And this can be kind of, we can start doing as a part of that. So we'll have some displays, we'll have electric bus there, we'll have some electric cars there, we'll have some chargers there, we'll have some e-scooters there, we'll have some dockless bikes there. So you not only get the presentations from the people that are talking about the mental health of active transportation, about the cost savings of transportation. Mike Zimney is going to talk about that for how we can use this for recruiting and retaining talent. Active Seniors, AARP, is going to be giving a presentation about their passport and active living efforts here in Fargo. So it'll be a lot of times when we've hosted these transportation symposiums in the past, there are people that are already bought in. So we're really focusing this to the business owners and showing the benefits that if we manage this and plan for it, it can really be a benefit to leverage transit. Transit ridership's 2.1 million. It's been plateaued for about 4 years now, and ease of use. So everything that you do on those e-scooters or e-bikes or bike shares on your phone, that isn't that way on the bus. And we can do that, and it's 8%. So if you buy a bus pass for $5, you pay the vendor 8%. So those are just some things that we can do to give them a status of where we are, but also where we can be. So that's what Mobility Matters is about, and it's on May 22nd from 9 to 12:30, and you'll all be getting invites with those that agenda and those programs. And then we also have the parking lot between the Civic and the library reserved for those displays. We'll invite food trucks for lunch, and then you'll be able to test drive some of this stuff. So it'll be kind of
So
fun.
how are you marketing this, and how are you strategically increasing the audience so that you're getting people in there that aren't just?
Right. So I reached out to the EDC, so Ryan Aschheim is with the EDC, and then also Darren Dunlop with the Chamber, and then Charlie Johnson with the CVB, and then we're going to tap into their network. So like when they invite for Eggs and Issues, that's who we're going to be going to, and we're going to make it generally known to the public too. But I think it's really critical to have the people that are making these decisions in the room to see what the opportunities are. And so Matt Bust has a budget for advertising, so they're working for advertising with advertising marketing, and they even have JJ Gordon's going to be our moderator.
Okay.
and there'll be some commercials, and then there'll also be some time on the radios about what this is about.
Well, I think it's really important that the message goes out that says this is important to all of us.
Right.
Not just transit people. This really makes our community better, and it's going to impact your life personally. And then maybe give some vignettes about how it would impact the life of a senior, how it would impact the life of somebody who's not really engaged at this point in time. I think we kind of we talk to the voices, or we listen to the voices inside our own heads too much. And we really need to be expanding these audiences for this kind of thing. The entire community needs to be behind this and engaged in this.
I agree. Good opportunity. And again, it's planning ahead, because this stuff's coming. And unlike other cities where it just got dropped on them, our current policies, we have a pedestrian and bike committee at COG, and our current policies don't allow these scooters really anywhere. But then you think about, where do skateboarders and scooter guys now, where are they supposed to be?
Yeah.
And one of the things is develop your bike lanes so they're shared. And then cycle tracks where you have two-way traffic, but then that's the bike sharing. They're off the sidewalk, sharing that area for that micro-mobility option. So those are some of the best practices that we're studying and looking to present.
Good.
So, and it'll be in the library, but then there'll be displays around, and then we also have access to the Civic, so we can maybe scoot around in there. I can see Dave, I don't know, I haven't seen anybody as big as you on one, but I bet it could go. Have you ridden one?
My son was just in Dallas and was on a Razor and, or whatever those and that's all the kids use those. They don't use Uber now. Now they use the electric things. So
Right.
yeah, no, I don't want to, I didn't want to see any video of him on it. I don't want to see it with me on it. So, but like you said, you got to have policies for this stuff because otherwise, but to me, the safety, they use the sidewalks and they go too fast for pedestrians. That's the concern. So you got to have policies because you know they're going to come to Fargo
right.
eventually.
So, you know, we're in a good position because we already have pretty restrictive policies on it, and it's way easier to be restrictive on the front end and then open it up. So that's where we're at. So instead of them getting dropped off, let's get ready.
Can I ask you, Mike, so right now, if they came to Fargo, would they be allowed on the sidewalks or would they have to use the street?
They would have to use the street, and then if, you know, part of how bike share was successful was that the working relationship with the city. You know, a lot of bike share cities paid for a large portion. Our city, we paid $30,000 and donated a dock. And of the 500,000, that was the city's expense. But the critical piece was that access to the sidewalks and public space. And so these companies too, they can't just lay them on the sidewalk right now, and that's a good thing. So we can develop relationships and open it up in a manageable way. Anything, Randy?
I'm just listening, so.
Well, when you go down to Denver, just, like you said, you feel like a slalom pole, and it's not comfortable.
Oh.
So the next item is I thought it was fun, this ramp really did go up. So this is a picture of the Block 9 parking ramp. And, you know, I guess I'm not very impressed as far as the look of it goes because our development's gonna going to the east with the riverfront. So we're gonna have a lot of traffic going both ways. So I'm thinking that for our the next ramp that we're involved in, the city doesn't own this ramp, so we don't have any say in how this is developed. But the mercantile ramp will be partially with the city. I mean, we're gonna own it like we do ROCO. And so I think we need to be thinking about how it looks all the way around instead of just one side or the other, you know, what's the Broadway face of it? And so anyway, a friend of mine, Scott Horvick, remember him? He was with Theater B.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he saw this and then he said, well, we gotta do something about that. So he did this.
I love it.
And, you know, this, I mean, now that makes you happy. I mean, I don't care if there's snow on the ground.
Yeah.
And so, again, we have these opportunities at like the civic ramp that we own.
Yeah.
You know, so I had them do this is just Photoshop, so you can just plug and play whatever you want. And I don't know if you'd paint it on or if you'd stick
Well, I
it
think
on.
that's against the city ordinance to have murals in the downtown painted on buildings.
It may be.
Yeah, I
you
think it
know.
is.
And so you think about the alleys, and again, that's access. I did see in Mandan, they're having a big to-do about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
And I thought it was a pretty nice mural.
I did too.
But anyway, I think maybe Dave, you're a commissioner, we can change the policies.
Well, I don't know if you remember that, we used to have a building with a big mural on it on Main Ave.
Yeah, you were the first.
So clearly I was looking after myself there, right? And-
That's right. Modern Man did it, didn't he?
Yeah, no, they're cool. I think they add to
Yeah.
the, but I that's awesome. But the
is.
question I have for you is, so right now, that's how they're gonna leave it, just raw cement?
I don't know. So Rusty, do you know?
But that's just an open, maybe they
Yeah,
can,
I
maybe
know.
they can answer
They might
that.
have something in mind.
And I guess from our perspective, we would like to encourage them to make it look nicer than just raw cement, because I mean, but I'm guessing they will. I mean, obviously, if you're building a big building, you want it to look nice and so.
Right. And another thing about this is, you know, we've learned that standalone parking kills sidewalk action. And so this has no retail on the basement, on the ground floor. I mean, we've activated the whole, you know, all sides of the Roberts. And that's thanks to the developer. I mean, you know, we worked really well. But the thing is we put the RFP out, this group did, and we asked for those things and we got them. And so I'm saying we need to do the same thing with the mercantile. So
I agree.
that's something that, it's an opportunity. And if you do it on the front end, it doesn't cost.
Can I just add one thing? I apologize for going off topic, but the Roberts Alley, all those overhead power lines are going to be buried, and so I think that will be a great thing. And there's a little bit of controversy with that, but I think over the long term, once that gets all done, the alley's going to be redone, and then to have the overhead lines, that is going to be it's going to be a popular area, which is a little ironic, but an alley. But I think it will be heavily used, and so that's a great thing.
We just had Melissa's equivalent from Davenport, Iowa up, and he gave a presentation about arts and business, but Bob Stein and I got to walk him around. And then, of course, we brought him to the alley and we said, now, can you see that steeple at the end? I mean, that's no accident that they lined it up that way.
Yeah.
And when those power lines go down, it's gonna be stunning. And then you look to the south and you see your facade, and that's a nice bookend too.
Well, thank you.
It is.
Thank you very much. Let's say that again.
And your grotto.
This is televised, so.
I'm waiting for your grotto. It's gonna be cool.
We're actually, when you were speaking, I was thinking about that. I've been thinking about, even the street parking on Broadway, and, is it really necessary to have, diagonal parking right next to where the outdoor dining is? And, just some other things, because we are going to be redeveloping the Herbst building, and do I need curb cuts in there for the ideas and the plans? So it could be that we have no parking in the front of those two particular buildings, and how important is that? Is it to having there? For me, it's not, and it certainly is a lot cleaner, and you can take care of your sidewalks right away. So I think it's really been a good meeting today. It's given me personally as a developer a lot of things to think about, and what we're going to do in the downtown, how to develop and redevelop some of the space that I have, and my partner Warren. But I do appreciate the comment about the bookend, and we talked about that alley a long time ago and taking that out. Mm-hmm. I think when Dave, I've gotten old.
Anderson.
Anderson was here, and we talked about cleaning that up, and also creating businesses on the back sides of the alleys, because you have such a depth to these businesses on Broadway. You can't hardly utilize all the space, but you can utilize it if you split it in half, and then you have businesses on the alley side. So I think it's something that we're looking at the old Broadway, the Herbst building, the development of our parking lot, in creating that continued alley presence, and how do we get people out? We happen to own our alley, but we still need to allow access for the condos at the end of Broadway there for their ingress and egress. So a lot of things to do, but the meeting is good to understand that, even from my own as a parking commissioner as well as a developer. So I thought it was real good.
Right.
Thanks.
So we haven't been having meetings as regularly as we had been, and I think it's important that we do our monthly meetings. So if you have agenda items, let Mark and Nicole know, or me know. I put the agenda together this time because there really wasn't anything pressing to talk about, but really we don't do the day-to-day stuff. We're here to do the strategic stuff. And you think about some of the changes that we've made. I mean, when, we did the graduated parking rate, we did the 2 hours free, we brought the bid after we visited Lincoln and saw how well their block by block thing had done. So there's been a lot of improvements that we've made. And we have a lot more to do, so we can't do it unless we plan for it.
Well, and when we're not in crisis mode is the time to have the discussion. And a lot of this is not new kinds of conversation. In fact, Ken Promisberger gave me years ago a magazine that had a whole thing about how the alleys were being developed in 1963 or 65 or something, when they were looking at that and looking at that as another storefront kind of avenue. And so it's really important to have the conversation prior to the crisis.
Yep.
And that, I think that's the wonderful opportunity we have right now.
Thanks.
I think, when they ask for us to, if we have anything else to add to the agenda, sometimes it gets a little late. And so, because you've asked that the last 2 times, I'm writing my notes now about things that we might want to talk about. So, but if we could just get, 3, 4, 5 days earlier, at least a proposed agenda, that we see what you
Draft
have.
agenda,
Yeah,
right.
and then, if we want to add to that, take a look at the you know, the discussion from the last meeting, make our notes, and something that we want to carry forward with. Because I think there's a lot of things that we need to discuss, and I think, you know, the last time we canceled the meeting, but I'd rather come to all these meetings and have a little bit to talk about, and I think going forward, we'll be able to do that and have really good discussions.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Well, there's only two of us, so if we decide we want to talk and discuss further today, Margaret, we don't have to go anyplace. Don't get up yet.
Coffee might run
Unless
out.
I second this. We're staying here. All right, I'll second it.
All in
Wow,
favor?
thank you.
right.
I'm forever grateful.